go. G'day, welcome to episode 1 of season 4 of the Regenerative Journey, and I find myself on the veranda facing north at the farm at Byron Bay, where I spend a fair bit of time actually, and for a very good reason, which we might even touch on. I might make a note of that actually. There you go. There's my first little variation on the theme already. This episode is really about a bit of a kick-off for season 4, a bit of touching on who you can look forward to hearing about, why, their, as is the theme of the show, obviously, their regenerative journeys. I am just reminded quickly. I'm sitting on the veranda here at the farmhouse, and there's a slight wind, and I've had to put one of my socks. Those who are on the YouTube machine or any other visual device or platform would see a reasonably smelly sock. I wish I had put clean ones on this morning. That is on there, acting as a fluffy rabbit thing to stop the wind. So hopefully you don't hear the whistling wind. So a bit of a rundown on the season 4, which is really exciting because I should have checked this morning, but I think we're up to 30,000 downloads, which I think is not too bad. After all, there's a little bit of wind just there. Which is not bad after, I think, just over 14 months. We've had, of those 14 months, we've probably had 4 or 5 months off. I think we've had a pretty long stint away this time. And what's beautiful to hear and to read and to see is messages of thanks and appreciation, gratitude for the show. There's still, well, of course, and I hope that it continues, people are discovering it, now after 3 seasons, which is awesome, and we're going to do our best to keep promoting it and make sure more and more people keep discovering, because I think it's one of those things that given the feedback we're getting, given the vibe, and I guess the energy and the momentum we feel that we've got, we think it's going all right. So, we were nominated for Best Interview for the Australian Podcast Awards last year. They are on again this year. We haven't quite worked out which categories we'll jump into. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's something I'll ask you right now, our lovely viewers and listeners at this point, because we haven't got all our videos online yet, on the line. There's a dog about to piss on a mint bush. It's just Andy Carbone, where are you, mate? Your dog is desecrating the vegetables. Question to our lovely listeners is, who would you like to... who do you think our best interview was with? I'm going to say season 3. I'm still not quite sure what the parameters for the Australian Podcast Award submissions are. But I reckon they're probably from somewhere like July. Would it be July last year? Or maybe it's August last year. I can't remember. But anyway, certainly it would encapsulate season 3. We'll get some details on that close to the time. But if you are listening to this and you have a voice, and you always have a voice, which is something we'll get to later on. I'm going to write that down, the voice, and I'm not talking about our favourite singer, Johnny Farnham. I'm talking about your own individual voice. You let us know who you think you would like to see us put in the category of best interview, because I'd just love to know. You guys are the best reference point for us to understand what really resonated with you. So to season 4, we're backtracking, aren't we? So let's step into the future, which is going to kick off on September 7. You should be listening to this on or after the September 7, if all goes to plan, in 2021. And we have a cracking season lined up for you. We have more than half of the ones we're going to interview and release for season 4 in the bag. We have got Maggie Beer. I'm going to kick this one off. I think it's safe to say that, I'm right in saying Maggie Beer is next week. Who doesn't love Maggie Beer? And I tell you what, I appreciated her. I appreciated her cooking, her books, her personality. But when you meet, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Maggie in her piano room, her music room at her house, her cottage in the Barossa. So not the farm that where they sort of Colin and her first settled many years ago, 40 years ago I think it was, and grew quince and produced pheasant. their own personal farm, which is just such a beautiful, just speaks so loudly of her style and her attitude to life, in a music room. And what an absolute delight it was to chat with her. And she was under the pump too. I turned up in the morning, I walked in the wrong way, sort of nearly fell into the pool, found my way, tapped onto the glass window. Anyway, we got set up in the music room. I had to pretty much dismantle what she'd, just to get my gear in there and everything. She's so charming and forgiving at the same time. And we had such a lovely yarn. It was only about 45, 50 minutes, because she was having to then go and shower and head to, it was in the middle of Taste Australia there in South Australia, in the middle of the celebrations in late April, early May, and she was under the pump. So I just really appreciate the fact that Maggie Beer, the legend that is, who was the Australian of the Year, the Senior Australian of the Year a few years ago, she gave me that time. So that's awesome. So she's next week. We've got a really good, I think, so far, because we're sort of only, say 60% of the way through the recordings. I've got a few more to do this week, and we are at the farm at Byron Bay, and you will hear a buggy driving past. Oliver's eggs. If you don't know Oliver and his eggs, get yourself to the Mullumbimby markets or somewhere and get them. So that's why we're on a working farm, so that's why you can hear the noise and the dog pissing on the mint. Where was I? Who was next? I can't remember. I was banging on about then. So pretty good. I guess breadth of subject matter this season. We've got farmers. We've got current farmers. We've got carbon farmers. We've got transitioning farmers. Nick Mace, I'm hoping to interview. That's to be decided. And Stuart Austin, who is Wilmot Cattle Co., who you might be aware earlier this year did a deal with the organisation or the business he works with. Did a deal with Microsoft in regard to carbon credits, which was quite eye-opening, and sort of setting potentially a bit of a standard in how to activate property natural capital, landscape natural capital, and that's an interesting topic which I might touch on a bit later on. That what is natural capital, but also not so much what right do we have to activate it, but how can we, and how, what are the parameters, and what are the long-term impacts, and sort of the, I've got some sort of questions around sort of farm sovereignty and those sort of issues. So Stuart Awesome, he was just, and I've been following you, Stu, for some years now, and fascinating story. Who else have we got? So that's sort of a bit more farming. We've got some viticulturalists, some winemakers, grape growers. Melissa Brown there at Genetically in South Australia, and Amelia Nolan at Alkena in the Barossa as well. Where did I say? Genetically in McLaren Vale in South Australia. So, I don't know. Pete Windrum I interviewed there in series, I think it was series 2 actually, and we did talk a little bit about grapes and wine and yummy things. So go back to that episode if you want to hear about Pete's amazing story and sort of stepping into the world of biodynamics. So some really good yarns about grape growing and how biodynamics is playing a part of that for those guys, and in Amelia's case, some fascinating use of technology to work out the terroir and the differences in soil, not within like a paddock, or a block of vines, but doing some sort of like, I guess it's sort of seismic, I can't remember quite the terminology, but some seismic crazy cool stuff and working out the rock type and the soil type, and I guess is the rock that produces the type of soil, and then correlating the characteristics, sorry, the characteristics of that soil and the wine it produces and the terroir, how that is reflected in the wine, and actually harvesting, I don't think I'm giving this away too much, actually harvesting grapes, not as a block, but in as a block of, not as a normal block as in a square block or rectangular block, but as a block of soil, as an area of soil or a quadrant of soil. it's fascinating stuff. And that's a really good example, I reckon, of science and technology and some pretty cool sort of seismic action being used, hand in glove with a very ancient farming practice of growing grapes and producing wine, and then identifying and separating and really letting the individual soil type be expressed in the wine, as opposed to a big block, three different types of soil all coming together. Those grapes going into a thing, and those nuances just being a little bit sort of literally diluted by maybe a more a stronger flavoured sort of soil, and that's I guess it's think about it, the flavour of soil, but it's that flavour of soil and the characteristics which you will taste in wine, and it's, depends on how much you want to break that down into its individual components. Obviously, diversity is a wonderful thing, but anyway, that's another one. Bang on about that. But it was just fascinating stuff. And what Melissa's doing down there in McLaren Vale with husband Michael, just lovely people, and doing wonderful things with Biodynamics. And the setup they've got down there to demonstrate that is just awesome. So go get yourself to Gemtree down there as well. Who else? We're touching on the food. We've got Maggie, Rebecca Sullivan, love Rebecca, and Damo down there in South Australia. And Claire, went to visit their farm when I was down in South Australia earlier this year. And just her wonderful story, and her love of food, the love of people, the love of Indigenous culture, and also the use of and the propagating and the reverence she has for Indigenous foods and the culture. It's just fascinating. So I loved having a chat with Rebecca. Who else have we got? Matt Evans, you mate. I've still got to get myself down to Tassie or to you with all the lockdowns and so on. It's been pretty tough to get our diaries aligned. We've had a few cracks at it. But I'm hoping before the end of season 4, I've sat with Matt. I did a bit of a sneak preview at the Regenerative conference there a few months ago, where I spoke with Matt for 20 minutes as part of a combo episode. You can get that sort of at the back end of season 3. He loves a yarn. He got some really good I was going to say tales. They are tales, I guess, in a way. Stories to tell, and fascinating bloke. So looking forward to catching up with Matt there. I've got a few others. I'm not sure what I'm going to mention because I haven't actually interviewed them yet. But I don't know. Oh, Tammy Jonas, who I have interviewed down there at Jonas Farms in Dalesford. She is awesome. Talking about the Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance, her work there, how she got to be where she is now, and her husband, her very resourceful, lovely husband Stuart, and just an amazing transformation of their farm from what it used to be to what it is now. What they're doing for community, for food, for advocacy of good, decent, nutritious food is awesome. So that's a cracker. That's in there as well. Michael Taylor, who I've known for a couple of years now. They're at sort of Walker, I guess it is, between Armidale and Gyra, somewhere in there. Is that right? No, Kentucky. It is Kentucky. And Taylor's Run, and Michael and his family there's quite a few family members still on the block there, but just the work that his family, mum and dad, did 30 plus years ago with planting agroforestry, native and exotic species there, and the workshops that they run, and Michael's regenerative journey is awesome as well. So I think that's pretty much touched on all the ones that I've have actually interviewed. I've got a few more lined up, but maybe I won't touch on them until I've actually got them in the bag and keep you in suspense a little bit. Let's talk about the farm at Byron Bay. What an awesome place. It's pretty quiet now because it's lockdown. We're all in lockdown, and we are it's a bit sad. I reckon that we're at that part of human history where it's an example of a place that has pigs and chickens and some horses and macadamias and vegetables and people and flowers and seedlings. It's empty, that's sad. It's sad that, look, I don't know how much I want to bang on about this sort of thing. I guess I might as well go there now. yeah, hang on. Before I do that, I've got to mix this one up here. Just before we leave the season 4, a new segment we're going to do, and it's something I have to totally catch up on. And I think it's probably only going to be available to our Patreon members as a bit of a bonus. Is or it might be on YouTube. I'm not sure how we're going to rig it up yet. You might have some views either way, listeners. Is sort of like some rapid fire questions, which I've heard other podcasters do, and I kind of love the fact they're a standard set of questions that that I ask my guests, and they're pretty short, sharp, answers. That's the whole the whole point of rapid fire, as per. So that's what I do. So if you guys have got any suggestions, I actually don't know quite how we're going to gather these bits of feedback from you guys. One is the this sort of the rapid fire questions, and the other one, I can't remember what I asked you to do just before, about 10 minutes ago. I've got to go vague. How we're going to gather that information, whether that's go to the website. That's what you can do. So go to the website, drop your email in there, and say, hey, you just listen to the podcast. I reckon you should ask these questions. We'd love to hear what you'd like to for me to ask in the series of rapid fire questions to my guests. That's right. The other one was, what was your favourite interview of season 3? We'll keep it to season 3 for the time being. Get on the website. Let us know. Love to hear what you reckon, and we will we'll get on it. There are other categories in there as well on the Australian Podcast Awards, which they're in there. I'm not sure if they're up on the website yet, but Google Australian Podcast Awards and check it out. And hopefully, when we line ourselves up and we apply and we get accepted as an application, I'm not sure how the process works anymore, we'll get you to vote. Because some of them you can vote for. I think this is one vote thing. Now, getting on to the COVID. Don't know where to take it. I did have a bit of a rant on my newsletter the other day, and I guess I might just reiterate that without exploding. I'm trying to look. I'm looking at this pretty logically and systematically and objectively, right? So I don't know if I need to dwell on this too much. Because this is a rant, of sorts, but it's not a challenge to anyone. This is not a bloody do this, or this is not to sort of. This is just to prompt a bit of thinking or some asking questions of me or of oneself or of the government or anyone else they want to ask questions of. I don't think we're actually asking enough questions, to be honest. There's something in that. And these are questions I'd love answers for. If the whole idea of the lockdowns and the mask wearing and, dare I say, the vaccinations is to save lives, right? I don't know as many people in government, in the general public, in any industry that wouldn't probably agree that the premise for this is we are doing these things, taking these measures to save lives. Right? If that's not the premise, well, it's totally lost on me, and someone might want to tell me. If that is indeed the premise for this, to save human life. So, are we actually doing that? Has the last 18 months saved more lives by going down this path of lockdowns, vaccinations, mask wearing, restrictions, quarantines? Are we saving more lives? If that is our foundational assumption, throw a bit of science speak around there, we're testing the assumption that this is all about saving lives, then let's do the audit. Someone needs to do the audit. I think there are people sort of throwing bits of numbers around, but I'm talking about, okay, if the COVID is killing people, and it is, how many people? What I'd love to know is, in a situation where on the news there's, say, 200 positives that pop up in the someone's going, there's 200 extra positive cases today, and yesterday there were 100, let's just say, and and the week before was 50 or whatever it was, and so to look at that, you go, there's more cases. Okay, that's fine. But what is the bit that I think is missing is, what is the proportion of people who are tested are positive? Because if that proportion is not changing, then we're not actually. There's not a higher outbreak. It's not as though there's more in the population. We're just understanding and we're verifying that yes, more people are tested and there are more positives. But if there's no change in the proportion, that's why I look at it, and that's not what we're being told. We're doing lockdowns and masking and the whole show based on positives. And there's a whole conversation around, well, are they false positives? What's the machine that the machine that's being used has been shown, and even the guy who invented the machine said in 2018, this should never be used as a diagnostic tool. I mean, the guy who invented it said don't use it, but the world's using it. So, can we trust those positives? I don't know. That's the questions I've got. What are the death rates? Well, that's, there's a couple of 0.00s there in terms of, deaths, as a percentage. So I'm not convinced that, we've got it's the killer. And look, people are happy to challenge me. I'm not saying this to challenge anyone. It's just like, this is what I'm looking at the numbers and going, okay, so are a lot more people dying in the world from this than any other year? Any other seasonal flu year, any other sort of viral outbreak? I don't know. I'd love to know the answer to that. And then you look at the other side of the coin, which is, well, as a result of the lockdowns and everything, what's been the impact? What has been the loss of life as a result of that, through suicide or drug overdose or domestic violence or any number of probably the I shouldn't say unforeseen, so it should have really been seen, I reckon. What's the next bit? The bit that the result of the lockdowns, which is supposed to stop the spread, is it really stopping the spread? I don't know. But what is not stopping the spread is the fear and the anxiety and the pain and the often, the death of those procedures and the conditions that have been put in place. So, I'm really struggling with, are we saving more lives? Because I just don't know that we are. And if we aren't, then we've failed. The measures have failed, really. It's just who is dying, And the other thing that's interesting is the people who are dying, say, someone died, a 40-year-old died in a hospital in somewhere. And I'm not saying that, let's be clear, I'm not a fan of death. And every death is a tragedy, and that sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it is. I don't, you don't care about people dying. Of course I care about people dying. I'm also interested in how they died and what conditions did they die under. Did that 40-year-old who died in that hospital, what were his sort of other conditions? Was he diabetic? Was he overweight? Did he have heart condition anyway? Like all of the comorbidities that are never talked about. It's just like someone died. Okay, well, and how many people didn't? Let's talk about that. How many people didn't? How many people that did get COVID that didn't die? That's an interesting stat. And we're not just, and just sort of getting to a sort of a the health side of it. Like this is a great example of stuff that I and others on our sort of on our wavelength bang on about is why aren't we as a society, as a culture, as a world, species, focusing more on the cause of these problems, not the symptoms. In farming we go, oh, we want to kill weeds. Well, let's not just kill the weed. Let's identify what the cause, why that weed's there. We will look at it totally differently. What we will do to solve the problem, if we indeed there is, we identify there is still a problem, will be totally different. And this is no different. It's like, what is what's the cause of this? I'm not talking about some viral escape from Wuhan. I'm talking about why are people getting COVID, as an individual. It's about susceptibility, I think. It's about, because it's in the air. Viruses are in the air the whole time. We as a species have evolved with viruses, and I don't think we could have actually evolved as we have without them. So, it's not as though all viruses are bad. Some you'd rather not have, of course. But, when our immune system is working, when we are eating healthy food, it's not just the nutritional thing either. When Biodynamics we talk about the energetics of it, it's not just what you put in your mouth, it's what you're absorbing through your skin, it's the attitude you have when you're eating the food, it's the engagement with it's the engagement with that food. It's a reverence for that food, and there is something in that. And I'm not about to have arguments with people about it, but that's just something that I believe, and it's a biodynamic philosophy. It's just a life philosophy. There's more out there than just that is in this piece of steak or that carrot X number of elements and minerals and enzymes, and that's a recipe, and you put that in your mouth and away you go. There's other stuff that happens, it's the engagement with that food. So why isn't the government talking about that? Right? It's the same old thing. What's the symptom? People getting sick. Let's hit them with something. Because this isn't going to go away. There'll be other variants and other versions and things, Man, let's talk about health. Let's talk about the food we eat. Let's talk about where it's from. Let's talk about the health of the soil to produce healthy food, to build our immunity, to be healthier, to be more resistant to these things, and not be as susceptible, And if we think about, okay, you look at all of the things that are killing people the most. It's heart disease, it's cancer, it's all nutritionally based. I believe, it's a result of shit food, purely and simply, and shit living. Not thinking, or thinking negatively, or not thinking. I mean, the food is, when we eat our food, that impacts our thinking, absolutely. And there's plenty of studies now with nuns and prisoners and things about, in sort of reasonably isolated or conditions that they can sort of remove the variables of and do some correlations with, good food, nutritious food, and biodynamic food at its finest, producing good thinking. Not positive, it's the wrong word, just good thinking, sound thinking, deep thinking, conscious thought and conscious action and conscious behaviour. So the health minister or ministers, I mean, we should call them the illness ministers, because it doesn't seem like they're really wanting people to get healthy. That's a whole other conversation around agendas and who's running the show. Well, I mean, I guess it's more that, but also, where's the money? Who gains from health? Who gains from illness? And I don't think anyone's gaining much at all at the moment, except for those who are making the vaccinations that are being, injected into people. So, and I don't know, I just don't think that's the answer. I just think, let's look at the food, let's look at the lifestyles, let's look at the health, and separate that, and really look at, long term, do we need so many people with diabetes? Do we need so much cancer? Do we need so much heart disease? High blood pressure, all those things. Respiratory malfunction, all those things. Anyway, I don't know how clear that was all, but it's really, I'm really quite sensitive at the moment because of what's going on, but I'm frustrated. I'm not openly bang on about it, but it's on my mind. I think if any parent, and this is the thing that really gets me, if there's a tear in my eye at any point, it's just thinking about what it means for the kids, and the sovereignty and the freedom of a family, and what we can do or now can't do about that. What rights and freedoms are literally being taken away. And I don't know, I really question the whole idea of, if you follow the guidelines of what the government is telling us we should do to regain our freedom, I just don't know whether that's exactly what we're going to get. I just don't know. Well, I kind of do, but I don't know if I'm going to talk about it too much. So that's the COVID show, and that's, this is not over. I'm just grateful I've got a farm that I can go to, and I've got food, I've got good people, I've got like-mindeds, I've got nutrition, I've got sanctuary. It is not a coincidence that property prices around, Australia, dare I say, I'm not sort of familiar with out sort of out west, far west, but certainly on the eastern seaboard, property prices are going up because people want to get out. They don't want to be. It's a risk mitigation strategy, isn't it? And it's probably a combination. They want to get out of the urban areas where there's population concentration, and maybe they're thinking, there's a lot of COVID here, a lot of illness, or a lot of exposure to things, and they just want to get out of it, which is great, I reckon. Let's change let's turn the tide of depopulating the rural areas and get people back out there as it used to be. So that's a good thing, I think, and that's a choice. People want to get out of there. Good for them. And if they've got somewhere to go, and they've got the finances to do it, that's wonderful. And they've got farms they can look at, and that's forcing property prices up, and that's a whole other thing. but that brings a whole another sort of realm of culture in the rural communities, which I think is needed. And I've banged on before about young people bringing with them to the country, not just young people, any aged person who's not a farmer, and bringing skills and experience that is not necessarily prevalent and rife in those communities. It used to be, because there was a lot more people and more diversity, more biodiversity of thought and thinking and behaviours and experience and skills. Let's get them back in there. Let's get them back into the rural populations, and no matter what the drive out of the cities was, I think that's a good thing. And that affords, if they can get themselves some land rented or bought, some sovereignty and some space and sanctuary, and they can grow their food, and they can get away from the 5G. The 5G. Oh, I wasn't sure I was going to say that, but anyway, I did. I'm just not sure about the 5G. Anyway, I'll be happy not to have it. Give me some optic fibre any day. It works a lot better. Anyway, we don't need to go there. But getting out and about there's just so many multiple benefits, isn't there? The kids growing up with chickens and dogs and sheep and cows and plants and carrots and everything. Just what a wonderful experience for kids. Rented or bought properties, let's just do it. Let's help them out there. Bring those skills into the communities. And there are great organisations like Cultivate Farms and others who are helping people get on land, and doing and being supported to do so, and aligning blocks of land with people who want to do something with it. And it's really emphasised to me the real privilege it is to be a steward of a landscape where we can, yes, maybe even under a little duress at the moment, identify, acknowledge, and grow food. What a wonderful thing. And this is not to sort of, how can anyone who can't do that? This is maybe just a little bit of a call to action to say, you know what, if you can't own some, go and find some anyway. Go and visit, take your kids. But what an honour it is, and a privilege to grow food and support your family as a parent. That's a scary thing for me, that whole, the kids and what's in it for, what's the future for them, what will they be forced to do, have to do, what world as parents and adults who are decision makers, at government levels, industry levels, what sort of future are we actually creating for our children, Again, a bit of a cliched thing to say, but cliches are there because they're said often and for a good reason, like, really? What's it all about? When I had my first child, Illa, 11 years ago, it went, okay, I get it now. I understand why what my role in the world is as a human. As a man, as a father, I got it. The world changed overnight. And that hasn't changed. My view, it's only strengthened. And, when there's threats and there's uncertainty, as parents, how do we respond to that? What do we do? What is our response? That good old expression, we have a responsibility. Break it into two words: ability to respond. We have an ability to respond. We're adults. We have resources. We have experience. Are we preparing our children to leave us? And what are we leaving? What are we creating as a society, as a species, as mankind, to have our children leave into? What are they going into a world that is what we'd like it to be? Is that, are we setting them up for a failure? Are we setting them up for I don't know where I was watching the Truman Show last night, and with the family, it was awesome. Anyone who hasn't seen the Truman Show, it is Jim Carrey's he's fantastic. It's how old was it now? It's 20 years old or something more, 20 years plus, I can't remember quite now. 1998 it might have been. Anyway, wasn't made last year, that's for sure. And there's a scene, and there's a girl wearing a badge, and it said, how will it all end? I think that's what it said, how will it all end? And I just got thinking, going, oh, well, I don't know actually. I don't want it to end. Maybe the question is where is it all going? What are we heading towards? So, don't know. Be interested to know your thoughts on it all. I think there's no better time for like-minded to put their heads together and think about what sort of world. There's even more motivation, more prompting, more good reason to be proactive and not reactive, and really think about why, as parents and as citizens of this planet and as members of the species, what the hell are we doing? I just don't know. The whole. It's not as though the climate debate has any less relevance now, or is less important. In some ways, for me, I'm going, okay, I reckon this is not a cop-out by any means. I'm thinking, wow, I've always said nature will work itself out. Like we're gonna ruin ourselves, right? Yes, ruining the planet we would no doubt ruin ourselves, but like, if there is no species, if we have just killed ourselves, regardless of what we've done to nature, we've actually, we are behaving in a way that in some ways is not doesn't relate to nature, but relates to our own nature, our own behaviours. Like, the Earth's probably cheering, going, "Oh, this species that's been ruining me for however many years we've been ruining it." It's probably sighing, a sigh of relief, going, "Oh, it's just going to implode. This mob's going to just wreck themselves, and nature will just have a bit of a clear run, a bit more runway now." It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Anyway, that's a bit of a bang on. The code red doom and gloom. The UN, they announced their sort of code red stuff the other day. Sort of plays that a bit. It's I guess just to that is that regenerative agriculture, regenerative farming. Farmers who are working with nature. It just emphasises even more the importance, I reckon, of the role we can play, in this world. Whether it's talking about COVID and health and improving and boosting our immunity, or just putting that aside, just feeding the masses, and in doing so, in producing beautiful, nutritiously dense, clean food, we can't but not improve our environments, because it's by definition it goes hand in hand, because those clean environments produce that kind of food. So where do we focus? What do we focus on? And that'll be a bit of a theme over series 4 with our different guests as to how, what their views are, not necessarily about COVID, but certainly about the world, where it's going, what role they'll be playing. What else can we talk about? I don't know. Apart from feeling a bit sort of miffed about where the world's going, I'm pretty, again, I'm glad. I can't tell you how stoked I am, how relieved, if I think about it, that I'm in the industry that I'm in. In farming, yes, but specifically in an industry or a part of the industry which is, taken upon themselves to go against the grain and, grow cleaner, more nutritiously dense food. Again, whether it's COVID, whether it's any other sort of diseases in general, whether it's, drought, flood, anything, the changing climate and the impact of humans on it. This industry has a wonderful role to play. We could bang on about, those who are against regenerative ag generally, more to do with the element of regenerative agriculture which involves animals, and people having a problem with animals being part of the solution. I just don't know, everyone's got their blinkers on, everyone has their biases, but I just, again, trying to be objective, and I don't go out of my way to have those discussions with people who are affronted by the fact that animals, are involved with every part of the environment on the earth, and the plants evolve with animals and vice versa. And so to think that methods of farming that just involve plants and often involve genetically modified plants is a way forward, is a way to produce clean, healthy, nutritious food. I think those guys are missing the point altogether. instead of siloing things, which is easy to do, you know. I just think that it's another big one. It's another big one. I don't really want to step into the ring with that one. It's not because I'm afraid. It's more like, my job is not to convince anyone of anything. My job, if I had a job that related to what I'm doing right now, it's to pose questions, ask better questions, incite a bit of curiosity, not necessarily incite agreement or disagreement. That might be the outcome, that's fine. But it's really about putting things on the table. And again, I think that's getting back to sort of the beginning of this episode. It's about the feedback we get. It seems that it does that. It gets people thinking. It gets them questioning things, rightly or wrongly. Their current behaviours, their previous behaviours, behaviours of different industries, of government. I think it's really healthy. I think not to look at both sides, not to explore, not to be curious, not to have a healthy dose of courage as well, because a lot of this stuff, whether it's you're talking health or agriculture, I know it's pretty much the same thing, environment, it's all the same thing. It does actually take some courage, because we know that, internally we may not like what we're going to hear or see or discover. And externally, we might find ourselves in confrontations with people about our behaviours or our thinking or our opinions. And that's the interesting thing, is like, man, everyone's got an opinion. Like, why do we have to be intolerant of other people's opinions? Because no one ever, as I said, no one's ever had an argument and gone, the other one gone, you know what, hey, you know what, thank you for changing my mind on that. That's so enlightening. People don't have arguments to win the other person over, though they think they are. It never happens. It's just it's a debate. It's, put it on the table, walk away, highlight that it's there, see what happens. And that's another conversation around, I guess, being a little bit political about, I don't remember if I talked about this the other day somewhere, maybe it was on another podcast, or I can't think anyway, about sort of, I don't know, the left and right of politics and where that's all going, and political correctness, and that just baffles me as well. We're getting off farming for a little bit, but it's still relevant. It's about people and life. Those on in the spectrum of politics and culture that are all about tolerance. It's about, you need to tolerate, and I don't disagree, by the way. You have to tolerate, no, tolerate's probably not the right word. It is in this context, but generally it's probably not quite right. Tolerate my skin colour, tolerate my behaviour, tolerate my sexuality, my gender. There's I believe that everyone has a right to express themselves however they want to. That's fine. That's it's human nature, and I don't mind the fact that other people are very adamant that everyone needs to tolerate everyone else's behaviour. But the interesting thing is, and I see it often, not so much personally, but I see it online, which doesn't make it valid. It's just I take it with a grain of salt. But I've seen enough of it that those who are often banging on about everyone needs to be more tolerant of everyone else, and not at all tolerant if your view just doesn't happen to align with theirs. It's really ironic, and just a really interesting scenario that plays out. That's another conversation, and it's not my forte. I'm no expert, but it's just my observation from the world. I don't know how that snuck into this episode, but anyway, it did. Oh, Struth. Reese, we're up to 45 minutes, mate. And the Corellas are still here. I have to get myself to something. So I think I might wrap it up. We've gone, it said total 35 minutes. I've gone over 10 minutes. But I think the first one and the other episode went for about this long too. So, hey, I just want to thank you if you've got to this end of it and my rant, whether that might have, in any event, or in the least, incited some curiosity and maybe some thoughts of your own about those topics. I kind of enjoy doing this. I didn't really have much of a plan. I did have a plan, but as most plans need to be flexible, I've sort of veered off that a little, but that doesn't matter. it's all about being adapting to the corellas, adapting to the dogs pissing on the mint there, adapting to the changing sun as it moves across the sky. It's not as hot as it was 45 minutes ago, and I think that's enough for me. Can't wait to introduce you to the guests in season 4. We've got some great surprises. We're really pumped, and again, I just want to say what an absolute joy it is when we receive that wonderful feedback. We see the downloads, we get the we get the good vibes coming from you guys, and we will continue to do this as long as we can. I hope you see some value in the time you spend with your headphones on, walking the dog, driving the tractor, driving the kids to school. I was going to say walking the kids to school. Well, I guess some people do walk kids to school if they're around the corner. That's if the schools are open. And that we love the fact that we are part of your day or your week. A lot of people say they can't wait to Tuesday mornings when the episodes come out, and I tell you what, that just makes it even more worthwhile doing. Just love it. So it's a real honour to be part of your lives, and I trust that season 4 will be a part of your life as well as we move through the next couple of months towards the end of the year. What will the end of the year hold? I don't know. That's why we're moving there, I guess, to find out. So enjoy all the guests and all the frivolity and the discussions in season 4 of the Regenerative Journey.